Hi, I'm Andrea, and I'd like to share with you today some thoughts that I had on the book of Luke, chapter 6. And these are just thoughts that I had as I was reading on my own personal study. I'm no expert on religion. So, the sermon that I want to talk about is in Luke chapter 6, verse 20 through the end of the chapter. And in this chapter, Luke is conveying a sermon that Jesus delivered, which is very similar to the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew, but I don't think it's the same sermon because there's so many aspects of it that are different than what you see when you read the Beatitudes. So it starts out with 4 blesseds that correlate with 4 woes. Let me read this for you. And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, "Blessed be ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye that hunger now, for ye shall be filled. Blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh. Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice ye in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For in the like manner did their fathers unto the prophets." Those are the 4 blesseds. And now I will read for you the 4 woes. This starts in Luke chapter 6, verse 23. This starts in verse 24. "But woe unto you that are rich, for ye have received your consolation. Woe unto you that are full, for ye shall hunger. Woe unto you that laugh now, for ye shall mourn and weep. Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets." So these 4 blesseds correlate to the 4 woes in a one-to-one relationship. The first blessed is blessed if you be poor, and the first woe is woe unto you that are rich. And again, the second blessed says, "Blessed are you that hunger now," and the second woe says, "Woe unto you that are full, for ye shall hunger." And the third says, "Blessed are ye that weep now," and the third woe says, "Woe unto you that laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep." And the fourth one starts to give us an idea of where Jesus is going with this. He says, "Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you and cast you out." And the fourth woe is woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. So this sets up Jesus' sermon as a commentary on social customs by which people are accepted or rejected. And these customs, while in specific ways may have changed from Jesus' day to now, in very general ways, they are the same. And we still have today ways in which people are socially accepted or socially rejected. And I want to propose to you that the rest of this chapter is commentary on this idea of social rejection and how we should behave and how often we do behave in ways that are not appropriate in God's eyes. And as a result, I think that each of the next verses can be read in 2 ways. they can be read by those who are socially rejected, and they can also be read from the perspective of those who are socially accepted by their peers and everyone speaks well of them. So Jesus starts out with the rest of his sermon saying, love your enemies, do good to them that hate you, and bless them that curse you, and pray for them that despitefully use you. And I propose to you that he's talking about your social enemies, and that those that curse you or are those that maybe aspire to be in a higher class or to have more prestige, more power, more fame, whatever it is that you have in your class, and that you as in the upper classes or in the more socially accepted groups would be inclined to consider those below you as despitefully using you. And Jesus is saying that we should love our enemies in the other class. And he's also talking about how we should offer our cloak and our coat when someone asks. Now, how many people have two outer garments that they can spare, especially in Jesus' day? So he's talking about the upper classes who have more than they need, and someone from the outcast part of society asking to borrow and asking for, anything, money, clothes, food, and he's saying, give to every man that asketh of thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods ask them not again. Now, how many of us lend to anyone and expect nothing in return? It's common to borrow a cup of sugar and expect that, they could borrow from you at a later date. So Jesus is saying, it's common to lend and to give good things to our friends, but he says, "What if you love them which love you, what thank have ye? For sinners also love those that love them." And he's not saying that it's bad to be nice to our friends and our relatives. What he's suggesting is that we should be nice to those in the other class, whether they're rich or poor, and offer of ourselves without any expectation. In verse 34 he says, if you lend to them whom you hope to receive, what thank have you? For sinners also lend to sinners, to receive as much again. But love your enemies, and do good, and lend hoping for nothing again, and your reward shall be great. For you shall be the children of the highest. Meaning that when we go out of our way to do uncommon kindness, that we are more like God. For it says in 35, he is kind to the unthankful and to the evil. So if someone has nothing and you give to them without hope to return, you're being like God, because you are giving without any hope to return, even though they might return the favor at some point. The idea is that not everyone is going to be as generous to you as you are to them. He gives the idea of the golden rule, that what you would have men do to you, you should also do to them likewise. And this is, obviously famous and has been quoted and restated in many different ways. But in social terms, the kind of treatment that we would prefer is what we should offer. And this is really a big challenge, I think, because it's very common to be comfortable among your peers, among people that you have a lot of similarity with, and to be less comfortable among people who you don't have as much in common with, who live a different kind of lifestyle, or who have more wealth than you do or less wealth than you do. And I think Jesus is asking us to step a little bit outside of our comfort zone in the way that we treat other people. So he talks about how to be socially accepted, we often have to buy favor by giving to those that they would then give back to us, or lending to those who would then be able to lend back. And this could be in terms of entertaining, having a party, and other people come, and then they would entertain you and invite you to come and possibly lend money and then receive again. And these are certainly, when we do these kinds of things, we are definitely working on being socially accepted by the group of people that we're in. But he goes a little bit deeper with this in 37 when he says, "Judge not that ye be not judged, condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned, forgive and ye shall be forgiven." So if you think about this in terms of social acceptance, he's saying, judge not those people in the in crowd, and if you're in the in crowd, condemn not or scorn the outcasts of society. What does it take to be socially merciful in our society and to have a non-judgmental attitude towards those with whom we disagree? Then Jesus goes into a couple of verses on blindness, and I want to propose to you that this is not just blindness in terms of what I can and cannot see physically, but I think he's talking about social blindness. And he says, can the blind lead the blind? Shall they not both fall into the ditch? And so he's not saying that one class of people with all of their education and their wealth and their prestige that they can see, and the outcasts who live in society below maybe their potential because of their means or their upbringing or whatever, he's not saying they can see either. He's saying to us, can the blind lead the blind? He is leaving that open, that both groups of people could be, in a sense, unable to see. And then he goes into saying the disciple is not above the master, but everyone that is perfect shall be as the master, as his master. So I know I'm looking at this saying, that's like the boss and the worker, or the professor and the student, that we're getting into more of the differences, the differential between two people in any kind of social situation. And that's when he brings up the mote and the beam, which is a little parable in which one person looks at another person and says, well, I see something in your eye, let me get it out for you. And the other person said, may or may not accept the help. But the commentator, which is Jesus, says, but what about how this person's offering to get something out of another person's eye when he himself has a greater object in his own eye, and how could that possibly work out in anyone's favor? So a mote is a very small speck and might cause you a little discomfort, but a beam in your eye would be a very large item that would cause you to be completely blind, possibly in that eye. And so how could someone who has a beam in their eye offer to get a little speck out of someone else's eye? And I don't think that this is about eyes at all, but I think this is about two people on a different differential. So, does a worker go to their boss and say, let me show you how this social situation would work out better, or let me give you some advice? No, that doesn't happen. And if it does, the boss can totally scorn the lowly worker for any advice that he doesn't particularly care to accept. The same way with a student and a professor. Does a student go and give advice to the professor on a better way to present the material? No, but it might be very common for a professor to offer advice to the student on ways to present material, or on what is right or what is wrong. And what I think Jesus is saying is that in social situations, both parties could be blind, and we need to look at other people with a little bit more mercy. And Jesus also says, this has a lot to do with what's going on in our heart, our emotional state of being with other people. And he kind of pulls that out in a little parable about the tree. Could a good tree bringeth not corrupt fruit, neither does a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For thorns men do not gather figs, nor of a bramble bush gather they grapes. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. So in social situations, whether you are on the side of the outcasts or whether you've been accepted by your peers and generally well thought of, the way that you treat other people and the way that you relate to those who are below you and above you really depends on what's going on inside your heart. And the things that come out of your mouth are going to be very strongly correlated to what you feel in your heart towards other people. And so I think, Jesus is getting closer to helping us to understand how we can be more like God in our social interactions when he talks about how we are known by the fruit that comes out of our mouth. And as he closes up the sermon, Jesus tells one last parable, and we're all really familiar with this. We've all sung this song with our teachers when we were little. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rains came tumbling down, and it goes on. The foolish man built his house upon the sand, and the floods came and they washed that house away. Well, that's a really cute story, and it's great to teach to children, but there's a deeper meaning when you take it in the context of social interactions that we have. And I really feel like this little story about building your house upon the rock or the sand has absolutely nothing to do with where we buy a house or what kind of soil we have underneath the property where we live. I think that it has everything to do with social acceptance, because he starts out by saying, "Whosoever cometh to me and heareth my sayings and doeth them, I will show you to whom he is like." So he's saying that what I have just told you, and these things, if you are able to implement, a different way of interacting with each other, if you're able to be less judgmental, to condemn not those who are below you, to forgive and be forgiven in social interactions, that you are going to have your life be on a more firm foundation, sort of like this story of the wise man who built his house upon the rock. And he says, the stream, okay, so the wise man built his house on the rock and laid the foundation on a rock, and when the flood rose and the stream beat vehemently upon the house and could not shake it, for he was founded on the rock. And then he says, but he that heareth and doeth not is like the man that without a foundation built a house upon the earth, or in some translations on the sand, against which the stream did beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. Now, if we think about our household, that's kind of like our life. Our life is built on our actions, and when our actions are such that someone could feel comfortable borrowing from us and knowing that they didn't have to repay, if they could feel comfortable knowing that whatever their actions were, good or bad, they would be forgiven, they would not be judged, then those people are going to be really comfortable with helping us in our time of trouble. And I think that when the flood rises and the stream beats on our life, that we are in danger of collapsing under the weight of our own trials, but that those trials would be mitigated if we had friends that we could call upon, because they knew that we were merciful and that they would also be merciful again. And I think that on top of that, if we are kind to those who deserve nothing of our regard, even those that would use us and abuse the privilege of being our friend, that when it comes time that we have trouble or trials, that we will have maybe something of an inner strength that allows us to weather the storms of life a little bit better, and possibly have more options for asking for assistance, or having more people surrounding us that are also loving and generous and kind, and that could be a benefit to us as a fruit of a good life that we've lived. So I just want to share these thoughts with you, because I feel like Jesus' sermons and his stories, while individually they can be understood as wise sayings and useful for our lives, I feel like more than just a wise saying, Jesus' sermons are deep and profoundly applicable to my life, that they really speak to the situations that I encounter every day, and that they challenge me to be a little bit better than I would normally be, and to step outside of my comfort zone and offer to others a little bit more of myself than would be expected. And I feel like as I look at Jesus' words, that they show me a way of being that is higher, a higher standard of living that gives me something to work towards in my daily life, and hopefully could even solve some of the challenges that I have in interacting with other people. And I just feel like Jesus was totally aware of these kinds of things and offering to those who would hear his words later the best possible advice that could help us in any time, or what I want to say is in any phase of life, whether we're young or middle-aged or old, that in all phases of our life we have social interactions with other people, and that the golden rule is always applicable. Thank you.